The rain came down in sheets across the alien compound, turning the red soil into thick, clinging mud. In the far corner of the loading zone, chained to a rusted post, the creature lay motionless. Its massive body rose and fell with labored breaths, each one a struggle against the weight of exhaustion and neglect. The beast had once been magnificent. Standing nearly 12 feet tall when healthy, with 4 powerful legs and a hide that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, it had been the prized possession of the Krell Trading Consortium. They had used it to haul cargo across worlds where machines failed, where the terrain was too rough or the atmosphere too corrosive for their precious technology. The creature's biology made it perfect for such work, able to adapt to almost any environment, powered by a metabolism that could process almost anything organic. But that was before the accident. 3 months ago, during a routine cargo transfer on a mining colony, a support beam had collapsed. The beast had been crushed beneath tons of processed ore. Its back left leg had been shattered. The bioluminescent patterns along its flank had gone dark and dead, and something inside had broken that went deeper than bone and tissue. The Krell had tried to repair it at first. Their medical technicians had sealed the worst of the wounds, set the broken bones with metallic braces, and pumped it full of stimulants to keep it working. But the creature had never fully recovered. It moved slowly now with a pronounced limp. It could no longer pull the heavy cargo sleds. It had become, in the cold calculation of the Krell, worthless. So they had left it here, chained in the mud behind their compound on this backwater human colony world. The Krell were leaving tomorrow, their contract complete, their ships loaded with valuable minerals bound for the core worlds. They had posted a notice on the local networks offering the creature for sale, but there had been no buyers. Who wanted a broken beast that ate more than it could work for? The Krell had eventually stopped even bringing it food. Why waste resources on something that would be dead soon anyway? The creature's eyes, once bright with intelligence, were now dull and unfocused. It had stopped trying to break free days ago. The chain was too strong and it was too weak. It simply lay there in the mud, waiting for the end that it knew was coming. That was when Marcus Webb found it. Marcus had been working the night shift at the Colonial Water Treatment Facility when he heard about the Krell compound. One of his co-workers had mentioned seeing something large and alive being left behind. Marcus had a soft spot for animals, even alien ones. Back on Earth, he had volunteered at wildlife sanctuaries, helping rehabilitate injured creatures. When he heard about the abandoned beast, something in his chest had tightened with familiar anger. He went to see it on his day off, driving his battered ground transport through the rain. The Krell compound was mostly automated now, the aliens themselves already aboard their ships in orbit, waiting for final departure clearance. The gates hung open and no one stopped Marcus as he drove through. He found the creature in the mud and his heart broke. It was even worse than he had imagined. The beast was emaciated, its ribs visible beneath the dull hide. The metal braces on its leg were rusted and loose, clearly causing pain with every small movement. Infection had set in around the wounds and the smell was terrible. But what struck Marcus most were the eyes. When the creature looked up at him, there was no hope in that gaze. Only the quiet acceptance of death. Marcus had seen that look before, in the eyes of animals too badly hurt or too traumatized to believe they could be saved. He knelt in the mud beside the massive head, ignoring the rain that soaked through his clothes. The creature flinched slightly but was too weak to pull away. Marcus reached out slowly, letting his hand hover near the beast's snout. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns in its hide, the way its nostrils flared with each breath, the intelligence still lurking behind the pain and exhaustion. "Hey there," Marcus said softly. "I know you probably can't understand me, but I'm going to help you. I promise." The creature's eye focused on him for a moment and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Or maybe just the acknowledgement that someone had finally seen its suffering. Marcus stood and examined the chain. It was thick industrial cable, secured with a magnetic lock that required a Krell access code. He pulled out his multi-tool and studied the mechanism. He had worked with alien technology before. Everything had a weakness, a way to bypass the systems. It took him 40 minutes of careful work, getting increasingly soaked and muddy, but eventually the lock clicked open. The chain fell away into the mud with a heavy splash. The creature didn't move. It simply lay there free but unable or unwilling to believe it. Marcus understood. Freedom meant nothing if you were too broken to use it. He pulled out his communicator and made a call. "Jenny, it's Marcus. I need your help. And bring the heavy medical kit from the clinic." "Yeah, the one for large animals. Trust me on this." While he waited, Marcus sat in the mud next to the creature, one hand resting gently on its flank. He could feel the faint pulse beneath the hide, irregular and weak. The creature was dying, and they both knew it. But Marcus had learned something during his years working with injured animals. Sometimes the body could heal itself if given a chance. Sometimes all a creature needed was someone to believe in it long enough for it to remember how to believe in itself. The rain continued to fall, washing some of the mud away, revealing more of the creature's true form beneath the filth. Marcus stayed there, keeping watch, letting the beast know that it wasn't alone anymore. Whatever happened next, it wouldn't die here in the mud, abandoned and forgotten. That, Marcus decided, was something worth fighting for. Jenny Okonkwo arrived 30 minutes later in her medical transport, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she took in the sight of the massive creature lying in the mud. She was the colony's veterinary technician, though her patients were usually the chickens, goats, and occasional Earth-imported livestock that the colonists kept. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Marcus, what is that thing?" she breathed, stepping carefully through the mud with her equipment cases. "I don't know exactly," Marcus admitted. "Some kind of working beast the Krell used. They left it here to die." Jenny set down her cases and pulled out a scanner, moving slowly around the creature. The beast watched her with those dull eyes but made no move to resist or flee. It had given up on survival, and that passive acceptance made Jenny's professional demeanor crack slightly. "This is bad," she said, studying the readouts. "Really bad? It's got infections in multiple sites, severe malnutrition, possible internal injuries, and this leg." She examined the crude metal braces. "These aren't medical devices. These are cargo restraints. They just bolted metal to its bones and expected it to keep working." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made his anger burn hotter. The Krell were advanced, civilized by galactic standards. They traded with dozens of species, including humans, and yet they had treated this intelligent creature like a disposable machine. "Can you help it?" he asked. Jenny was quiet for a long moment, her scanner still moving over the creature's body. "I don't know. My equipment is designed for Earth animals. I have no idea if the medications will even work on its biology. And even if they do, Marcus, this thing needs surgery, weeks of intensive care, and probably a miracle. We don't have facilities for something this size, but you can try." She looked at him, then back at the creature. Its breathing had become more labored since they arrived, as if even the small hope of help was too much stress for its failing body. Jenny had become a veterinarian because she believed all creatures deserved care and compassion. Looking at this broken beast, abandoned and suffering, she knew there was only one answer she could give. "Yeah," she said, "I can try." They worked through the rest of the day and into the night. First, they had to move the creature somewhere sheltered. Marcus drove back to his small homestead on the colony's edge and cleared out his equipment shed. It was cramped even for the beast's reduced size, but it was dry and warm. Getting the creature there was another challenge entirely. The beast couldn't walk far, not with its injuries. Marcus ended up renting a cargo lift from the colony depot, normally used for moving shipping containers. They positioned it carefully, and with gentle encouragement and a lot of patience, they managed to get the creature onto the platform. It whimpered during the process, a sound that cut through Marcus like a blade, but it trusted them enough to try. Once in the shed, Jenny began the real work. She administered broad-spectrum antibiotics, hoping the creature's biology was similar enough to Earth animals for the drugs to work. She cleaned the infected wounds, removing dead tissue and the barbaric metal braces. The creature groaned in pain but didn't snap or lash out. It seemed to understand they were trying to help. "Its biology is fascinating," Jenny said as she worked, her professional curiosity overcoming her exhaustion. "See these patterns on its hide? They're not just decorative. I think they're part of its respiratory system, like secondary lungs that process atmosphere directly through the skin. And this bone structure, it's partly organic, partly something else, almost crystalline in places." Marcus held a light for her, watching as she carefully sutured the worst wounds. "Will it survive?" "Ask me in 48 hours, Jenny said. "If the infections don't kill it, and if its body accepts the medications, then maybe. But Marcus, even if it lives, I don't know what quality of life it will have. That leg is badly damaged. It might never walk properly again. One problem at a time, Marcus said quietly. They finished the emergency treatment in the early hours of the morning. Jenny set up an IV drip with fluids and nutrients, adapted from equipment designed for horses. The creature lay on a bed of old cargo blankets, finally clean and bandaged, its breathing slightly easier. "I'll come back in the morning," Jenny said, packing up her equipment. "Try to get it to drink some water if it wakes up. And Marcus, call me immediately if anything changes." After she left, Marcus sat on an overturned crate near the creature's head. He should have been exhausted, but adrenaline and worry kept him alert. The creature's eye opened occasionally, fixing on him with that same questioning gaze. Could it understand what was happening? Did it know they were trying to save it? Marcus began to talk to it, his voice low and soothing. He talked about Earth, about the animals he had known, about why he had come to this colony world. He talked about anything and everything, filling the silence with human words the creature couldn't understand. But tone mattered, connection mattered, and as the hours passed, Marcus noticed something. The creature's breathing synchronized with his voice. When he paused, it became agitated. When he spoke, it calmed. As dawnlight began to filter through the shed's windows, the creature did something remarkable. It shifted its massive head, moving it slowly and painfully across the blankets, until it rested near Marcus's feet. The gesture was clear. It wanted him close. It trusted him. Marcus reached down and gently touched the creature's head, feeling the warmth beneath the hide, the faint vibration of breathing, the subtle bioluminescence beginning to flicker back to life in tiny spots. It was fighting. Despite everything, some part of it still wanted to live. "That's it," Marcus whispered. "You keep fighting. I'm not giving up on you, so you don't get to give up either. We're going to get through this together." The creature's eye closed, but Marcus could have sworn he saw something in that final glance before it slept. Not just acceptance anymore, something closer to hope. He settled in for the long watch, determined that the creature wouldn't face another moment alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The Krell had abandoned it, but Marcus Webb wasn't the Krell, and that, he thought, was going to make all the difference. The next 3 days were a battle for survival. The creature's fever spiked on the second night, its body burning with heat as it fought against the infections that had taken root in its wounds. Marcus stayed by its side constantly, applying cold compresses and monitoring its vital signs with Jenny's equipment. He called in sick to work, unable to leave the creature alone even for a moment. Jenny came by twice daily, adjusting medications and checking the progress of healing. She brought supplies from the colony medical center, carefully not mentioning where she had obtained them or whether she had proper authorization. Some things, she decided, were more important than regulations. On the third day, the fever broke. The creature opened both eyes fully for the first time, and Marcus saw clarity there that had been absent before. It was aware, present, and seemingly surprised to still be alive. It tried to lift its head and succeeded, looking around the shed with evident confusion. "Easy," Marcus said, moving into its field of vision. "You're safe. You're in my equipment shed. We've been taking care of you." The creature's eyes fixed on him, and Marcus felt the weight of that alien intelligence studying him. This was no simple animal. There was something more here, a depth of understanding that made Marcus wonder just what the Krell had been using as a mere beast of burden. The creature made a sound, a low rumbling that vibrated through the floor. It wasn't aggressive. It was questioning, trying to communicate something it had no words for. Marcus wished desperately that he could understand. "I know you can't understand me," Marcus said, "but you're going to be okay. We're going to help you get strong again." Over the following week, progress came in small increments. The creature began to eat, tentatively at first, accepting the nutrient paste Jenny had formulated based on analysis of its digestive system. Marcus supplemented this with local vegetation, bringing in samples of different plants to see what the creature would accept. It seemed to prefer the blue-leafed shrubs that grew near the water treatment facility. Consuming them eagerly, the wounds began to heal, the creature's remarkable biology knitting itself back together once given proper care and nutrition. The bioluminescent patterns along its flanks started to glow again, faintly at first, then with increasing brightness. Jenny was fascinated by the process, taking detailed scans and notes. "It's like its body was in shutdown mode," she explained to Marcus. "All non-essential systems powered down to conserve energy. Now that it's getting food and treatment, everything's coming back online. This thing is built to survive." But the leg remained a problem. Even as the rest of the creature healed, the damaged limb showed limited improvement. The Krell's crude repairs had allowed fractures to heal incorrectly, and there was nerve damage that Jenny's equipment couldn't fully assess. The creature could put weight on the leg now, but it walked with a pronounced limp, and Marcus could see pain in its movements. He began researching obsessively, digging through the colony's database for any information on Krell working beasts. What he found disturbed him. These creatures, called Gathrak in Krell language, were bred specifically for labor. They were intelligent, trainable, and naturally loyal. They bonded with handlers and worked willingly when treated well. The Krell claimed to have elevated them from a primitive state, but Marcus suspected the truth was darker. The Gathrak had probably been a fully sentient species before the Krell decided they were more valuable as livestock. He shared his findings with Jenny one evening as they watched the Gathrak, attempting to walk around the shed, its movements gaining strength but still hampered by the bad leg. "That's horrible," Jenny said quietly. "They took an intelligent species and turned them into slaves. And when they're not useful anymore, they just discard them," Marcus added. "Like garbage." The Gathrak turned its head toward them at that moment as if it understood the weight of their conversation. Its eyes held a sadness that was all too human. It knew what it had been, what had been done to it, and now it was beginning to understand that these strange beings called humans were different. Marcus made a decision then. "I'm going to keep it. If it wants to stay, I mean. I've got the land, and I can build a proper shelter. It deserves better than what the Krell gave it." Jenny smiled. "You know the colony administrators are going to have questions. The Krell officially abandoned it, but there might be legal complications." "Let them come," Marcus said with a stubborn set to his jaw. "I'd like to see them try to take it away." As if in response, the Gathrak limped over to where Marcus sat and lowered its massive head, placing it gently in his lap. The weight was considerable, but Marcus didn't move. He simply rested his hand on the creature's head, feeling the warmth and the faint hum of bioluminescence beneath the hide. Over the next several weeks, a routine developed. Marcus extended the shed, building a larger shelter with proper ventilation and space for the Gathrak to move around. He constructed a ramp with a gentle slope so the creature could go outside without straining its injured leg. Jenny continued to provide medical support, though her visits became less frequent as the Gathrak's health stabilized. The creature was remarkably intelligent. It learned to recognize its name, which Marcus had finally chosen after much deliberation. He called it Titan, after the ancient Earth legends of beings of great strength and dignity. Titan learned to respond to basic commands, though Marcus suspected it understood far more than it could express. It developed preferences, avoiding certain foods and gravitating toward others. It enjoyed the rain, standing outside for hours with its face turned up to the sky, the bioluminescent patterns on its hide pulsing with what Marcus interpreted as contentment. The colony's residents began to notice. Some were curious, coming by to see the alien creature that Marcus had rescued. Others were nervous, worried about having such a large and unknown being living on the colony's edge. Marcus patiently explained the situation to everyone who asked, and most people came around once they saw how gentle Titan was. One visitor, however, came with different intentions. Administrator Chen arrived with a security escort, her expression stern. "Mr. Webb, we need to discuss your acquisition of Krell property," she said, pulling up official documents on her tablet. Marcus felt his stomach tighten but kept his voice level. "Titan was abandoned. The Krell left him chained in the mud to die. That's not property ownership. That's animal cruelty. The Krell filed no formal abandonment paperwork," Chen countered. "Technically, this creature still belongs to their consortium. They could return and demand its recovery, and we would be legally obligated to comply." Behind them, Titan watched the exchange with evident interest. The creature had learned to read human body language with surprising speed, and it clearly sensed the tension in the conversation. "Then let them come," Marcus said. "Let them explain to everyone why they tortured an intelligent being and left it to die. I'm sure the human media networks would love that story. The Krell are always talking about how civilized they are. Let's see how civilized they look when people know the truth." Chen's expression softened slightly. She glanced at Titan, taking in the creature's size, the still healing wounds, the way it stood protectively near Marcus despite its injured leg. "You really care about this thing, don't you?" she said quietly. His name is Titan, Marcus replied. And yes, I do. Because someone should. The next 3 days were a battle for survival. The creature's fever spiked on the second night, its body burning with heat as it fought against the infections that had taken root in its wounds. Marcus stayed by its side constantly, applying cold compresses and monitoring its vital signs with Jenny's equipment. He called in sick to work, unable to leave the creature alone even for a moment. Jenny came by twice daily, adjusting medications and checking the progress of healing. She brought supplies from the colony medical center, carefully not mentioning where she had obtained them or whether she had proper authorization. Some things she decided were more important than regulations. On the third day, the fever broke. The creature opened both eyes fully for the first time, and Marcus saw clarity there that had been absent before. It was aware, present, and seemingly surprised to still be alive. It tried to lift its head and succeeded, looking around the shed with evident confusion. Easy, Marcus said, moving into its field of vision. You're safe. You're in my equipment shed. We've been taking care of you. The creature's eyes fixed on him, and Marcus felt the weight of that alien intelligence studying him. This was no simple animal. There was something more here, a depth of understanding that made Marcus wonder just what the Krell had been using as a mere beast of burden. The creature made a sound, a low rumbling that vibrated through the floor. It wasn't aggressive. It was questioning, trying to communicate something it had no words for. Marcus wished desperately that he could understand. I know you can't understand me, Marcus said, but you're going to be okay. We're going to help you get strong again. Over the following week, progress came in small increments. The creature began to eat tentatively at first, accepting the nutrient paste Jenny had formulated based on analysis of its digestive system. Marcus supplemented this with local vegetation, bringing in samples of different plants to see what the creature would accept. It seemed to prefer the blue-leafed shrubs that grew near the water treatment facility. Consuming them eagerly, the wounds began to heal, the creature's remarkable biology knitting itself back together once given proper care and nutrition. The bioluminescent patterns along its flanks started to glow again, faintly at first, then with increasing brightness. Jenny was fascinated by the process, taking detailed scans and notes. It's like its body was in shutdown mode, she explained to Marcus. All non-essential systems powered down to conserve energy. Now that it's getting food and treatment, everything's coming back online. This thing is built to survive. But the leg remained a problem. Even as the rest of the creature healed, the damaged limb showed limited improvement. The Krell's crude repairs had allowed fractures to heal incorrectly, and there was nerve damage that Jenny's equipment couldn't fully assess. The creature could put weight on the leg now, but it walked with a pronounced limp, and Marcus could see pain in its movements. He began researching obsessively, digging through the colony's database for any information on Krell working beasts. What he found disturbed him. These creatures, called Gathrak in Krell language, were bred specifically for labor. They were intelligent, trainable, and naturally loyal. They bonded with handlers and worked willingly when treated well. The Krell claimed to have elevated them from a primitive state, but Marcus suspected the truth was darker. The Gathrak had probably been a fully sentient species before the Krell decided they were more valuable as livestock. He shared his findings with Jenny one evening as they watched the Gathrak, attempting to walk around the shed, its movements gaining strength but still hampered by the bad leg. That's horrible, Jenny said quietly. They took an intelligent species and turned them into slaves. And when they're not useful anymore, they just discard them, Marcus added. Like garbage. The Gathrak turned its head toward them at that moment as if it understood the weight of their conversation. Its eyes held a sadness that was all too human. It knew what it had been, what had been done to it, and now it was beginning to understand that these strange beings called humans were different. Marcus made a decision then. I'm going to keep it. If it wants to stay, I mean. I've got the land, and I can build a proper shelter. It deserves better than what the Krell gave it. Jenny smiled. You know the colony administrators are going to have questions. The Krell officially abandoned it, but there might be legal complications. Let them come, Marcus said with a stubborn set to his jaw. I'd like to see them try to take it away. As if in response, the Gathrak limped over to where Marcus sat and lowered its massive head, placing it gently in his lap. The weight was considerable, but Marcus didn't move. He simply rested his hand on the creature's head, feeling the warmth and the faint hum of bioluminescence beneath the hide. Over the next several weeks, a routine developed. Marcus extended the shed, building a larger shelter with proper ventilation and space for the Gathrak to move around. He constructed a ramp with a gentle slope so the creature could go outside without straining its injured leg. Jenny continued to provide medical support, though her visits became less frequent as the Gathrak's health stabilized. The creature was remarkably intelligent. It learned to recognize its name, which Marcus had finally chosen after much deliberation. He called it Titan, after the ancient Earth legends of beings of great strength and dignity. Titan learned to respond to basic commands, though Marcus suspected it understood far more than it could express. It developed preferences, avoiding certain foods and gravitating toward others. It enjoyed the rain, standing outside for hours with its face turned up to the sky, the bioluminescent patterns on its hide pulsing with what Marcus interpreted as contentment. The colony's residents began to notice. Some were curious, coming by to see the alien creature that Marcus had rescued. Others were nervous, worried about having such a large and unknown being living on the colony's edge. Marcus patiently explained the situation to everyone who asked, and most people came around once they saw how gentle Titan was. One visitor, however, came with different intentions. Administrator Chen arrived with a security escort, her expression stern. "Mr. Webb, we need to discuss your acquisition of Krell property," she said, pulling up official documents on her tablet. Marcus felt his stomach tighten but kept his voice level. Titan was abandoned. The Krell left him chained in the mud to die. That's not property ownership. That's animal cruelty. The Krell filed no formal abandonment paperwork, Chen countered. Technically, this creature still belongs to their consortium. They could return and demand its recovery, and we would be legally obligated to comply. Behind them, Titan watched the exchange with evident interest. The creature had learned to read human body language with surprising speed, and it clearly sensed the tension in the conversation. "Then let them come," Marcus said. "Let them explain to everyone why they tortured an intelligent being and left it to die. I'm sure the human media networks would love that story. The Krell are always talking about how civilized they are. Let's see how civilized they look when people know the truth." Chen's expression softened slightly. She glanced at Titan, taking in the creature's size, the still healing wounds, the way it stood protectively near Marcus despite its injured leg. "You really care about this thing, don't you?" she said quietly. "His name is Titan," Marcus replied. "And yes, I do. Because someone should." 6 months after the rescue, Marcus received an unexpected message. The communication came through the colony's official channels, marked with Krell diplomatic codes and stamped with multiple authorization seals. His stomach sank as he opened it, fearing the worst. The message was formal and coldly bureaucratic. A Krell trade delegation would be arriving at the colony in 2 weeks to conduct business. As part of their visit, they wished to inspect their property that had been reported as being held by a colonist named Marcus Webb. The tone suggested this was not a request. Marcus immediately contacted Administrator Chen, who looked as worried as he felt when she arrived at his home that evening. Titan, sensing his distress, stayed close by his side throughout the conversation. "They have legal standing," Chen said reluctantly. "According to galactic trade law, they never officially abandoned the Gathrak. They can claim they intended to return for it and that you've been holding their property without authorization." "That's ridiculous," Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. "They left Titan to die. I have documentation, witnesses, medical records showing the condition I found him in. I know, and I'll fight for you however I can. But Marcus, you need to understand what you're up against. The Krell have influence. They have lawyers who specialize in these disputes, and they have a vested interest in making an example of this case. If word spreads that humans can just take their property without consequences, it sets a precedent they don't like." Marcus looked at Titan, who was watching the conversation with those intelligent eyes. The Gathrak had come so far, had healed so much. The thought of it being taken back to the Krell, to a life of exploitation and eventual abandonment, was unbearable. "I won't let them take him," Marcus said quietly. "I don't care what their laws say," Chen sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that. Look, I'm on your side. But if you defy a legal order backed by galactic trade agreements, you'll face serious consequences. They could arrest you, fine you everything you have, even ban you from future space travel or colony living." "Then that's what happens," Marcus said with finality. Some things are worth the cost. Over the next 2 weeks, the colony buzzed with tension and activity. Word of the Krell's intention to reclaim Titan spread quickly, and public opinion was firmly on Marcus's side. People who had once feared the Gathrak now organized in its defense. Someone started a petition. Others contacted media outlets on Earth and other human colonies, sharing the story of the abandoned creature and the human who had saved it. Jenny worked tirelessly to document every aspect of Titan's rescue and recovery. She compiled medical records, took detailed scans, and prepared a presentation that showed beyond any doubt the neglect and cruelty the Gathrak had suffered under Krell custody. She sent copies to every major news network she could find. The children who had grown to love Titan made drawings and recordings, talking about how the gentle giant had become their friend and protector. The girl Titan had saved from the predators appeared on multiple news programs with her mother, telling anyone who would listen that the Gathrak was a hero, not property. Derek Morgan, the man who had once led the opposition to Titan's presence, became one of the most vocal supporters. He used his contacts in the mining industry to spread the story through trade networks, ensuring that anyone doing business with the Krell would hear about what had happened. Marcus watched all this with a mixture of gratitude and anxiety. The support meant everything, but he knew the Krell wouldn't care about human sentiment. They would come with their laws and their contracts, and they would expect compliance. On the day the Krell delegation arrived, half the colony gathered at the landing field. It was a silent protest, a wall of human presence that made clear where their loyalties lay. Marcus stood at the front with Titan by his side, Jenny and Administrator Chen flanking him. The Krell ship was sleek and efficient, its design speaking to centuries of refined technology. When the delegation emerged, Marcus was struck by how similar they looked to their vessels. The Krell were tall and thin, with smooth gray skin and large dark eyes. They moved with precise, calculated movements, and their expressions were difficult to read. The leader of the delegation, who introduced himself as Trade Supervisor Kelrath, approached with a data pad extended. "Marcus Webb, we are here to retrieve our property. The Gathrak designated as Unit 743 is to be returned to Krell custody immediately. His name is Titan," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady, "and he's not going anywhere." Kelrath's expression didn't change. "The creature is Krell property, purchased and registered according to all applicable trade laws. Your feelings on the matter are irrelevant. We are within our legal rights to reclaim it." "You abandoned him," Marcus shot back. "You left him chained in the mud, starving and infected to die. I have medical documentation proving the condition he was in. You forfeited any rights to him when you decided his life was worthless." "The unit was scheduled for disposal according to standard protocols," Kelrath said, as if this explained everything. "It had become unprofitable to maintain. Your interference has complicated what should have been a simple matter." Jenny stepped forward, her tablet displaying the medical scans. "This creature is intelligent, sentient. You've been using sentient beings as slave labor and discarding them when they're no longer useful. That's not property management. That's a crime against sapient life." Kelrath barely glanced at the tablet. "The Gathrak were legally designated as domestic labor animals over 300 standard years ago. Their status has been adjudicated by proper galactic authorities. This is not subject to debate." "Then maybe those authorities need to reconsider," Administrator Chen interjected, "because I can guarantee you that every human colony in this sector will hear about this, and humans have strong opinions about slavery." "Inflammatory language will not change legal facts," Kelrath replied coldly. "We will take the Gathrak now. If you resist, we will be forced to involve galactic peacekeeping forces." Marcus felt Titan tense beside him. The Gathrak had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now its bioluminescent patterns were flickering with agitation. The creature understood enough of what was happening to know it was in danger. Its head turned toward Marcus, those eyes full of trust and fear in equal measure. This was the moment. Marcus could step aside, let the Krell take Titan, and avoid all the legal consequences Chen had warned him about. It would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But as he looked at Titan, at the creature who had learned to trust again, who had found joy and purpose after being discarded like garbage, Marcus knew there was only one choice he could make. "No," he said simply. "You're not taking him. I don't care about your laws or your peacekeeping forces. Titan stays here with me where he's safe and valued. That's final." The crowd behind him erupted in support, hundreds of voices raised in agreement. Children were crying. Adults were shouting their defiance. It was chaos, but it was purposeful chaos. A wall of human determination that said some things mattered more than legal convenience. Kelreth regarded the crowd with something that might have been surprise, though it was hard to tell with Krell expressions. You would risk so much for a single unit of labor animal? This makes no logical sense. That's because you're thinking about logic, Marcus said. Try thinking about compassion instead. Try thinking about what's right. For the first time, Kelreth seemed genuinely confused. Explain. Marcus took a deep breath, searching for words that could bridge the gap between human values and Krell logic. When I found Titan, he was dying. Not just physically, but in here. He pointed to his chest. Where it matters most. The Krell bred the Gathrak to be intelligent, to bond, to care about the beings around them. That's what makes them good workers, right? Their loyalty, their desire to please. But you can't create those qualities without creating real emotions, real consciousness. And when you have that, you have a responsibility. Kelreth remained still, but his large eyes seemed to focus more intently on Marcus. The other Krell in the delegation shifted uncomfortably, perhaps unused to hearing their business practices questioned so directly. Titan isn't valuable to you anymore, Marcus continued. But value isn't just about what someone can do for you. It's about recognizing that they matter, that their life has meaning beyond profit. When I took care of him, when I sat with him through the worst nights and helped him heal, I wasn't thinking about what he could do for me. I was thinking about what he deserved. Every being that can think, that can feel, that can suffer, they deserve better than being thrown away when they're no longer convenient. This is sentiment, Kelreth said. But his tone had lost some of its certainty. It is not practical. Maybe not, Jenny interjected. But look at what happened here. Marcus saved one creature, showed it compassion when your people showed it none, and now this entire colony has come together to protect him. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's what builds real communities, real civilizations, not efficiency reports and profit margins. Administrator Chen stepped forward, her administrative credentials displayed on her tablet. Trade Supervisor Kelreth, I want to show you something. These are economic reports from this colony over the past 6 months. Our productivity is up. Crime is down. Community cohesion metrics have improved significantly. And you want to know what changed? Titan. She pulled up images and data showing the colony's transformation. The children learned about compassion by watching Marcus care for an injured creature. Adults learned about standing up for what's right. We became a stronger community because we had a shared purpose. You look at Titan and see a broken piece of equipment. We see a member of our community who makes us better. Kelreth examined the data with what appeared to be genuine interest. This is anomalous. We have not observed such patterns in other human colonies. Because not every colony has been given the opportunity to learn these lessons, Marcus said. But they could. Every Gathrak you've discarded, every creature you've abandoned because they weren't profitable anymore, they could be doing the same thing Titan is doing here. Building bridges, teaching compassion, strengthening communities. You're throwing away something valuable because you're too focused on the wrong kind of value. For a long moment, Kelreth was silent. He consulted quietly with the other members of his delegation, their conversation happening in rapid clicks and whistles that the translation devices couldn't quite capture. Finally, he turned back to Marcus. What you propose is unprecedented, Kelreth said. The Gathrak are property. They have always been property. To acknowledge them as something more would require restructuring centuries of law and commerce. Then maybe it's time for that restructuring, Marcus replied. Your people pride themselves on being civilized, on being more advanced than younger species like humans. But true advancement isn't just about technology. It's about how you treat those who can't defend themselves. It's about having the courage to admit when you've been wrong. Kelreth's expression was still difficult to read, but something had shifted in his posture. If we were to consider your perspective, what would you propose? Marcus felt his heart race. This was an opening, a chance he hadn't expected. He looked at Administrator Chen, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. Let Titan stay here, Marcus said. Officially transfer ownership to me, or better yet, grant him autonomous status. In exchange, I'll work with your people to develop a program for retired or injured Gathrak. Instead of disposal, you place them with human communities who will care for them. We document the results, show how it benefits everyone involved. If it works, maybe other species in the galaxy will want to participate. You could transform your entire relationship with the Gathrak from exploitation to partnership. This would be costly, Kelreth observed. We would lose significant labor resources. You'd lose equipment, Jenny corrected. But you'd gain something more valuable. You'd gain respect. Right now, this story is spreading through every human network in known space. The Krell consortium that enslaves intelligent beings and throws them away when they're broken. Is that really the reputation you want? Or would you rather be known as the species that was wise enough to change, to evolve beyond cruel efficiency? The crowd behind them had gone quiet, everyone holding their breath as they waited for Kelreth's response. Titan pressed closer to Marcus as if sensing that this moment would determine everything. Kelreth looked at the Gathrak for the first time with something other than calculation in his eyes. Unit 743, you understand what is being discussed? Titan's bioluminescent patterns flared bright, and the creature made a deep sound that resonated through the ground. Then slowly and deliberately Titan moved. Despite the injured leg, despite the pain it must have caused, the Gathrak walked away from Marcus and approached the Krell delegation. Marcus's heart seized with fear. Was Titan going back to them, choosing the familiar over the unknown? But Titan didn't stop at Kelreth. The massive creature moved past him to where the youngest member of the Krell delegation stood, a junior trade analyst who had been watching the proceedings with wide eyes. Titan lowered its head and gently touched its snout to the young Krell's hand. The gesture was unmistakable. It was the same gentle greeting Titan had given to the children of the colony. The same careful contact that said, "I will not hurt you. I only want to connect." The young Krell gasped, his hand trembling as he felt the warmth of the Gathrak's breath, the soft glow of bioluminescence. "It's so gentle," the young Krell whispered. "I have seen Gathrak in work facilities, but I did not know they could be like this." "That's because you never gave them the chance," Marcus said softly. "You never treated them as anything but tools. But they're capable of so much more." Titan returned to Marcus's side, and the human placed his hand on the creature's head in a gesture that was now completely natural to both of them. The bond between them was visible to everyone present, human and Krell alike. This wasn't ownership. This was partnership, friendship, family. Kelreth watched this with an expression that was finally readable. It was wonder, mixed with something that might have been shame. "I must consult with my superiors," he said at last. "This decision is beyond my authority, but I will recommend that your proposal be considered. The Gathrak will remain here pending final determination." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was more than Marcus had dared to hope for. He nodded respectfully to the Krell delegation. "Thank you for keeping an open mind. That's all I ask." As the Krell returned to their ship, the crowd erupted in celebration. People rushed forward to congratulate Marcus and to pet Titan, who accepted the attention with patient dignity. But Marcus felt strangely calm. The fight wasn't over. The Krell might still decide to pursue their original claim. There would be more legal battles, more uncertainty, but something had changed today. They had made the Krell see, not just see Titan, but see the possibility of something different. And sometimes, Marcus thought, that was where real change began, not with laws or force, but with opening eyes to new possibilities, new ways of thinking about old problems. Titan made a contented sound, the bioluminescent patterns glowing with peaceful blue light. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, they had started something that would help not just Titan, but every Gathrak suffering under the Krell's cold efficiency. 3 months passed in tense waiting. The Krell had promised a decision, but galactic bureaucracy moved slowly, grinding through centuries of precedent and law. Marcus continued his daily routine, working at the water treatment facility and caring for Titan, but the uncertainty hung over everything like a storm cloud that wouldn't break. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, Administrator Chen arrived at Marcus's property with an expression he couldn't read. His stomach dropped, fearing the worst, but when she spoke, her words were carefully measured. "The Krell Consortium has made their decision," she said. "You need to come to the administration building. They're broadcasting the announcement on the public channels, and they specifically requested your presence." Marcus's hands were shaking as he secured Titan's harness. The Gathrak sensed his anxiety and pressed close, offering silent support. Together, they made their way to the colony center, where a crowd had already gathered around the large display screens. The broadcast began with the formal seal of the Krell Trade Consortium, followed by a figure Marcus recognized, It was Kelrith, but his appearance was different now. He wore robes that indicated higher rank, and his bearing suggested he had been promoted since their last meeting. Citizens of the human colonies and members of the galactic community, Kelrith began, his translated voice echoing across the plaza. 3 months ago, I visited a human colony to resolve what we believed to be a simple property dispute. What I found there challenged assumptions that have guided Krell policy for over 3 centuries. The crowd exchanged glances, hope and fear mixing in equal measure. Marcus felt Titan's weight against his side, solid and real. The human Marcus Webb presented us with evidence and arguments regarding the Gathrak species that we could not easily dismiss, Kelrith continued. More significantly, he demonstrated through his actions what it means to value a being beyond their utility. This concept was difficult for us to understand at first. The Krell have long prided ourselves on efficiency, on the logical allocation of resources, but efficiency without wisdom is merely calculation. On the screen, Kelrith paused, seeming to gather himself for what came next. After extensive review and consultation with our ethicists and historians, the Krell Consortium has reached a decision. Effective immediately, the Gathrak species will be reclassified from domestic labor animals to protected sapient beings. All existing work contracts will be terminated, and Gathrak individuals will be given the choice of where and how they wish to live. The plaza erupted in shock and celebration. People were shouting, crying, hugging each other. Marcus stood frozen, unable to fully process what he had just heard. Had they really done it? Had the Krell actually changed centuries of policy based on what had happened here? Furthermore, Kelrith's voice cut through the noise, commanding attention. The Gathrak known as Titan will be granted autonomous status and permanent residency in the human colony where he currently resides. All Krell claims to ownership are hereby relinquished. Marcus Webb will be recognized as Titan's legal guardian, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Titan made a sound that Marcus had never heard before, a rising tone that seemed to contain relief and joy in equal measure. The Gathrak's bioluminescent patterns blazed with light so bright that people had to shield their eyes. Marcus wrapped his arms around Titan's massive neck, tears streaming down his face. This decision was not made lightly, Kelrith continued on the screen. It will require significant restructuring of our economy and our society. But the young human was correct when he said that true advancement is measured not by our technology, but by how we treat those who depend on us. The Krell have been efficient, but we have not always been wise. That changes now. The broadcast continued with details of the new policies. The support systems being established for displaced Gathrak. The partnerships being formed with human colonies and other species willing to provide homes for those who wanted them. It was comprehensive and thorough, the kind of systematic change that only the Krell could implement once they committed to a course of action. But Marcus barely heard the rest. He was too focused on Titan, on the creature who had been hours from death in the mud just 9 months ago. The Gathrak who had been considered worthless, disposable, not worth the cost of basic care. That same being was now free, recognized as sapient, granted a life of his own choosing. And he had chosen to stay here with the human who had refused to give up on him. Jenny found them in the crowd, her face wet with tears. You did it, Marcus. You actually did it. Do you know how many Gathrak this is going to help? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. I didn't do anything, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. I just did what was right, what anyone should have done. But you were the one who actually did it, Administrator Chen said, joining them. When everyone else saw a dying alien animal, you saw someone worth saving. When the Krell said their laws couldn't be changed, you proved them wrong. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. Over the following weeks, the colony transformed again, but in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Other human colonies reached out, asking for advice on preparing for Gathrak residents. The young Krell trade analyst who had been moved by Titan's gentle greeting published a detailed account of his experience, which went viral through Krell networks and sparked intense debate about the nature of consciousness and responsibility. 3 Gathrak arrived at Marcus's colony within the first month, all of them rescued from disposal facilities by Krell officials who had been swayed by the new policies. Marcus and the community worked together to build proper accommodations, and Jenny coordinated with xenobiologists to ensure proper medical care. Titan took to the newcomers immediately, greeting them with gentle touches and patient guidance, teaching them that not all beings would hurt them. Watching Titan interact with the other Gathrak, seeing the damaged creatures begin to heal and find joy again, Marcus understood something profound. He had saved one life, yes. But that one life had become a catalyst for changing an entire system. Sometimes he realized you didn't need to solve every problem at once. Sometimes you just needed to start with what was in front of you, to care for one being with complete dedication and let that ripple outward. 6 months after the Krell's announcement, Marcus received another unexpected communication. It was an invitation to speak at a galactic ethics symposium, to share his perspective on the relationship between advancement and compassion. He almost declined, uncomfortable with the attention, but Jenny convinced him to accept. "People need to hear this," she said, "not just about the Gathrak, but about what humanity can offer to the galaxy. We're not the most advanced species. We don't have the best technology or the longest history, but we understand something about compassion, about seeing value in the overlooked and forgotten. That's worth sharing." Marcus stood before an audience of representatives from dozens of species with Titan standing proudly beside him and told their story. He spoke about finding a dying creature in the mud, about choosing to care when it would have been easier to walk away, about the community that had rallied to protect what they had come to love. He spoke about the changes that followed, about the thousands of Gathrak now living free and valued lives across the galaxy. Humanity didn't invent compassion, Marcus concluded. We're not unique in caring about others. But maybe we're good at remembering that progress isn't just about moving forward. It's about bringing others with us, about refusing to leave anyone behind in the mud. Technology will advance, laws will change, civilizations will rise and fall. But the choice to see value in every thinking being, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to care simply because it's right, that's the foundation of any civilization worth building. That's what I learned from Titan, and that's what I hope we can all carry forward. The response was overwhelming. Some species embraced the message immediately, beginning to review their own relationships with dependent beings. Others were skeptical, seeing human emotionalism as weakness. But the conversation had begun, and it wouldn't be stopped. Marcus had lit a spark, and others were fanning it into flame. Years passed. The colony grew, becoming known across human space as the home of the first Gathrak sanctuary. Marcus eventually left his job at the water treatment facility to work full-time with the sanctuary, helping place rescued Gathrak with families and communities who understood the responsibility and joy of caring for them. Jenny published groundbreaking research on Gathrak biology and psychology, work that became the foundation for understanding their needs and potential. Titan remained Marcus's constant companion, but the limp that had once defined him was now barely noticeable. The Gathrak had grown stronger, more confident, fully realized in ways the Krell had never allowed. He worked with the newcomers, helping them adapt, showing them through example that they were safe now, that they mattered. His bioluminescent patterns had become a symbol across human space, appearing in art and literature as a reminder of what humanity stood for. On the anniversary of Titan's rescue, the colony held a celebration. There were now 15 Gathrak living in or near the colony, each one with their own story of abandonment and rescue, suffering and healing. Children played among them without fear, and the Gathrak watched over the community with patient devotion. Marcus stood with Titan on a hill overlooking the colony, watching the celebration below. The Gathrak's head rested on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that had become so familiar Marcus couldn't imagine life without it. "You know what the best part is?" Marcus said, knowing Titan couldn't understand the words but would understand the tone. "They said you were worthless. They said you were broken, not worth fixing, not worth caring about. But look what happened. Look what you helped build. You changed everything, my friend. Not because you were useful, but because you mattered, because you were worth fighting for." Titan's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with gentle blue light, and the creature made a soft sound of contentment. In the distance, the other Gathrak were playing with the colony's children, their own patterns creating a light show in the gathering dusk. It was beautiful, peaceful, and right. Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, about the frightened, dying creature he had found in the mud, and the magnificent being standing beside him now. He thought about the Krell's cold efficiency and humanity's messy compassion, about the value of life beyond profit and utility. In the end, it was simple. Some things were worth doing not because they were easy or profitable or logical, but because they were right. Because every being deserved a chance, deserved compassion, deserved to know they mattered. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not superior technology or military might, but the stubborn insistence that no one should be left behind, that every life had value, that caring was strength rather than weakness. Titan pressed closer and Marcus smiled. They had started this journey alone, one human and one dying alien in the mud, but they had built something beautiful from that beginning. They had built a future where beings like Titan could live free and valued, where compassion could change laws and hearts, where doing what was right could ripple outward and transform entire civilizations. And it had all started with one simple choice: to stop to see, to care, to refuse to walk past suffering without trying to help. In the grand scheme of galactic history, it seemed like such a small thing. But sometimes the smallest gestures carried the greatest power. Sometimes saving one life could change the entire galaxy. Marcus had learned that lesson well, and he would carry it forward for the rest of his days.